Are you guys dizzy watching that intro video with all those spinning
Yes.
stills?
Yeah. Took me back to my youth.
That's just a
TikTok.
normal weekend. That's just a normal weekend for the rock professor. He's spinning and twirling.
Yeah. Well, that's swirling and twirling. Yes.
I thought I'd do a swirly twirly video intro for us guys. I had nothing to do for about 10 or 15 minutes and thought I'd do some swirly twirlies. I got a message from Ryan. I did a book review and he didn't like the effect that I had. He said it's did you know that it was that it doesn't look good? I said, bro, thank you for giving me the. And I seriously meant it, because actually when I went back and had a look at it, Brad, it looked bad.
Is this a live from Andrew's garage?
Was that the book review?
Yeah.
I've got one thing. I think you need to put your voice a bit louder and the music a bit softer when you're doing it.
Cheers, bro. You see, though, it's all different.
No, because you've got a beautiful voice, Andrew. It needs to be present. It needs to be loud to sing in the mix. Yeah.
She'll be on one of those sleeping apps. Andrew reads a
Lord.
story to you. You'll be off in 2 minutes.
I think we need to get Andrew's laugh on repeat, like a loop.
Oh my Lord!
And that'll just keep everyone happy.
Oh, thank you. Look, if people are getting happiness and joy hanging out with the three of us and our other co-hosts here on this channel, we're 70% done the job, Simon.
Yeah,
we have. Yeah. Welcome to Andrew's garage. There are no cars,
folks,
only books.
Yeah. Books and guitars. Welcome to the channel, folks. If you're watching on a replay, obviously, we're happy that you're joining us here. If you're on a replay or joining us because you've picked up on a couple of social media posts that we've posted about some news that Brad's going to talk about soon, so you just have to be a little bit more patient if you want to find out what that is, because we've got some other things to talk about, Simon. The first thing that I'm going to mention, guys, we like to do this, don't we, when legends pass or there's a celebration of the anniversary of some legends. One of the big influences in all our lives passed away. Well, actually, he didn't pass away. He was murdered 43 years ago last week, Simon and Brad, John Lennon. So rest in peace, John Lennon.
Yeah. Mr. Sir Lennon. Very sad. Very sad. Huge loss for the music world, really. Huge loss. Yeah.
Well, yeah. They'll never get back together again, will they? Never destined to actually get back together. The one band who will never get back together. So now two of them. George, of course, died as well. So it's yeah.
Very sad. Taken way too soon, I think.
Kind of weird assassination thing is,
I've got a question, guys. Simon, do you remember what you're doing, where you were when it happened? Do you remember that?
I do remember where I was. I was round at my then girlfriend's house in a place called Dairy Square in Bristol when the news came. It was I don't know if I think it was on the radio, and so I know where I was. I don't know where I was from quite a lot of things, but I do remember that. Yeah, it was shocking, tremendously shocking.
Yeah,
because as I've said here only before, the Beatles are part of my growing up. My parents had Beatles records and things, and played in the house and things, and play a huge amount of pop music. My mum and dad in the house, but the Beatles was certainly one of them. So it was a great shock. And I just started. I was working in the record shop at the time, so.
Oh wow! The record shop would have been filled with Lennon's music, no doubt, for months after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, completely. So,
What about you, Andrew? Do you remember what you were doing, where you were, what happened, when it happened?
100%, bro. 100%. And thank you for asking, because we like to talk about these things here on the channel. I had been a Beatles fan for exactly 1 year. I was a Beatles nut, and I've mentioned to you before, guys, on this channel, that my friends were giving me shit because they were saying, "Why are you listening to this old music back in 1980?" And I was, you know, that was my first band that I just loved, and everything. I wanted to be a Beatle, Brad. You know, I couldn't. Yeah, just everything about me was just the Beatles, and I loved John Lennon. And also, Double Fantasy had just been released, and Woman was the single, and it was garnishing some attention on the top 10, the top 20 radios. Simon, you might remember that. You know, it was
Yeah, no, definitely, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
You know, it was doing well. And then, I just finished my first year of high school. Here in this part of the world, folks, Brad and I, Australia and New Zealand, we the high schools, the term ends about now, and this is when we have our summer break. So I just finished my summer break, Brad, and heard the news like Simon. It was on the radio, and I had some people close to me pass, Simon. A nana, a couple of aunties, and I remember crying when they passed away, and I cried when John Lennon passed away, because he was a big influence in my life when I was a young fella.
Yeah.
What about you, Brad? What were you doing?
I was very young when John unfortunately was murdered.
Brad was at kindergarten when they announced it over the tannoy.
Look, I know, I remember, specific things from my youth when I was very young. And I do remember when John passed on, obviously everyone was very upset. My family were very upset. It was on the news. I remember, I remember little specific things. Obviously, my family were upset. And I remember I got sad from it, but I was pretty young. But the significance and the absence that I felt because of that, I realized later as I became a musician and got really into the Beatles, and the huge loss. Then my mum said she was crying. Yeah, so I remember specific things, but I was pretty young. But like I said, I realised the significance behind losing John and the absence we all felt because he wasn't part of this world anymore.
And the way he was assessed, that
it's just a horrific thing to happen to anyone, and for anyone to get murdered, and obviously it was just a very sad moment in time for everyone, music world, his family. We've got to also remember, I mean, we all feel like extended family, and he felt like part of our lives, because a big part of my youth is listening to the Beatles, and one of the biggest part of my lives is music, and Beatles is a massive part of that. But you also got to remember he had family. He had 2 boys, had a wife, that were, tragically lost their father and husband. So it's a big thing,
Well, Mark Chapman can rot in jail, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes. Well, I think at the moment, I think he was due for release this year, but I don't think he's managed to get out. So,
Yeah.
But anyway, we don't want to get into that too much, guys. But yeah, I just, to answer you, Andrew, the significance and the absence I felt from the significance he played upon music as a whole, and the Beatles' music and his solo career, the effect he had on me as a musician, and the absence of not having that person in this world anymore to create, and the art form that he produced was it's a tragedy.
Well, he was on a roll. Double Fantasy was garnishing, like I said, some attention. It was a good album, Simon. It was a double album. He would have definitely taken it on tour. You know, he was pumping himself up to go out there and do something. Who knows what Lennon could have done? You know, who knows?
Well, you don't.
Simon.
Well, the inevitable, you know, the question of what he was. I mean, his solo career was just starting to, like, he released Double Fantasy. He was just back in the studio again. He was, you know, creating again, writing again. Who knows? You know, I know he was on talking terms with all the Beatles. They may have done something later down the track. You don't know, but we'll never ever have that opportunity because of someone's stupidity. But
Yes, he is, Stephen.
Yeah.
Yes, he's in prison. He's been in jail the whole time.
Quite a long time.
Yep.
So I think we should also mention the passing this week of Denny Lane.
Yes.
Who of course is first in the Moody Blues, sang Go Now, and of course was in Wings. And we've ranked the tracks of Band on the Run, and he's on Band on the Run. It's guitar player of Band on the Run. Co-wrote Mull of Kintyre. So he died this week, age 79.
Wow.
And we should also mention that it was Holly's birthday yesterday. So happy birthday, Holly, for yesterday. Got the mug back.
Oh, I haven't got.
Found it.
I haven't got mine. I'm going to class today, but
so happy birthday for yesterday, Holly. Hope you had a lovely day. And hope the lobster tails were good.
Yeah.
Very nice. And we should also mark the passing 2 days ago of not the passing, but on December the 8th this year, it would have been Jim Morrison's from the Doors' 80th birthday. So imagine that. Imagine Jim Morrison being 80 years old, the old sage with a big beard.
He'd look like exactly like Andrew does now, I think.
He'd look,
but older.
Exactly.
I mean the beard. I mean the beard.
In fact, reincarnated. Andrew Wilson is Jim Morrison.
5 to 1.
In the Doors, baby. Rise again.
1 and 5.
Yeah, no one here gets out alive yet. Absolutely.
You get yours, baby. I'll get mine. Yeah.
See, there's a strong resemblance now.
It really is now, is it? Or what do you think? It's more C6 Steve, actually.
No. So the plan was, folks, I'm going to interrupt my two fine co-hosts here with all this adulation that they're giving me. Thank you. The plan was we were going to do the first album, The Doors, today. But then we realised when Brad had picked the Beatles that wasn't going to happen.
Brad ruined it for me. Brad ruined the whole thing for me. A whole beautifully lined up piece. And he just ripped it up in front of my face. I mean, unbelievable.
So I think that's going to be the album for the first show when we're back next year, folks. So don't forget we have a summer break here on the channel. We don't do any rankings on a Sunday night, but I'll upload videos, and sometimes Simon and I get together and hang out, and Brad and I, so we might do that. You know, some impromptu shows, but nothing serious for a while. And we've got our 2 shows next week, Brad and Simon. On Saturday, we've got our Christmas show. And then the Sunday, we've got our top 5 and our -5 lists.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a gig next Saturday as well.
Wow. Well, yeah, we're all busy this time of the year. It's
and I went to a gig this week as well.
Oh, okay.
See Chris Buck's band Cardinal Black, rescheduled from April. Yeah, it was great. Really good.
I had a gig last night in Sydney, and
you did in a very nice theatre. Very jealous of your theatre playing, Brad.
No, this is a backyard party, out in
Oh, was it? Oh, okay.
past Penrith in the middle of New South Wales almost. It was a long way out, and my goodness, it was hot. It was 42 or 43 degrees Celsius out there, and they had a jumping castle. They had roving entertainers. They had the Back to the Future car. They had all sorts of stuff there. It was amazing. Check out Bre180's page for all that sort of stuff. You'll see all the updates there.
I'll put a link. I'll put a link to that when Brad or Simon are talking later on here in the chat if you guys want to check that out.
Yeah.
If you want to get a link to join us for our Christmas show, message me, message Simon, message Brad. They'll have a link at the end of the evening for them to give to you guys. So the usual story, if you're aware, you'll be aware of this. People pop on and jump on. They spend 10, 50 minutes, 20 minutes, a couple of hours talking about what's happened in the year and some hopes and aspirations for next year, Brad. And then people just jump on and jump off. But bear in mind, we can only have 10 people on the stream, and it works pretty well, Brad.
Yeah, it does if everyone lets everyone else talk.
I've got some good news. I've got some good... Oh, we've got Wayno here too. Good to see you, Wayno. I've got some good news. I've been in touch with Simon Hosford. Hoss is going to jump on at some stage. He's desperate to come on and say hi to people because he's missed a lot of people. But, you know, the reason why he's not here with us regularly, folks, is because he's, as you guys probably might be aware, he's busy making a living being a musician, Simon.
Indeed, yeah, fantastic. Yeah, well, it'd be lovely to see him. So, part of the team.
What a perfect segue.
What segue?
Into what?
Into Brad telling us what he's going to be doing soon.
Oh, yes. You want me to spill the beans? You're pretty serious about me spilling the beans. So, look, I spoke to Andrew and Simon this week and John actually that I've got something that's come up, and I thought I would announce it on the show before I announce it on my Instagram and socials and all that. Did you want me to go ahead and tell everyone, guys?
Oh yes,
this is the perfect place for you to give us the opportunity to share in this joy.
Well, if anyone knows who
join Andrew's evangelical channel in a minute.
If anyone knows what's happened to me, my back history of things in the last few years, I've had a few health issues and whatnot, and just prior to COVID, the whole lockdowns here in Melbourne and stuff, I released some music, and obviously because of the lockdowns and some health issues where I had a stroke and things like that, have limited my, I guess, for lack of better ways of putting it, confidence in getting out and performing live. But I feel like I'm in a good place at the moment, playing wise, singing wise, blah, blah, blah. So I put the feelers out, and I'm pretty happy to announce that I have my first EP release show at the Cherry Bar in Melbourne on the 9th of February. So I'm ecstatic. And inside I'm very nervous. I'm very, very, very nervous about doing it. I mean, I gig every weekend just about playing other people's songs, but getting out and doing my own thing is something completely different. And I've been in original bands before, but this one for some reason feels the closest to home, and I'm a little bit nervous, but so yeah, Andrew's put this together. So I've got my duo, and so we're excited. The boys, Jacko on bass and Nick on drums, are very close and dear friends to me, and we're gonna get out and play. We're gonna do whatever gigs we can do, If any bands, including Hosford, if you need a support band, we're it. BC3 or Brad Cook Trio, whatever you want to call it. That's we're out there. So I'm really happy to share that news with you, gentlemen, and everyone here in the channel. Because everyone here supports the channel and what we do here, and we really appreciate it and love it. But so thank you guys for letting me announce that here. I thought I'd announce it first here and share it with everyone here.
That's brilliant news. Brilliant indeed. Doing your own thing, getting out there. Yes. Yeah. Leaving the troubles behind. And, that's fantastic. Well done.
Yeah. So
congratulations, bro. Congratulations. Well done. I know that this has been something that you wanted to do for a while, and yeah, as they say in show business, Simon, go and break legs.
Don't break a leg.
Look,
don't do that.
the title of the EP was Time to Fly. So now I think it really is time to fly. It's time to get out there and do my thing.
Definitely.
Well
fantastic.
done. Well done.
Yeah,
you can. You're allowed to say a fuck yeah, John.
Yeah. We're 22 minutes in. It's probably all right. We've got to be. We're expecting GoPro footage, Brad, of you playing live and stuff, going live in the club and everything. We're in the whole 9 yards. Like you haven't got anything, but anything more interesting to concentrate on than getting on live with that. No, don't do that.
Yeah. So
we know who's definitely going to be there at the gig, and he's a good champion supporter of your music on his social medias. Is our very, very good and dear friend John ZD351, who will be with us here on the Christmas show next week.
Yes.
Yay!
I'm finally getting the ability to go out there and do my thing, and I'm glad, John, you'll be able to come along and enjoy it. Hopefully you can just sit back and have a beer or two and maybe drag a mate or two along and help spread the word. Let's do it.
Fantastic. So we're going to do everything we can, folks, to spread that. And so obviously we'll be doing posts. Brad will be doing posts. And if you can share any of the posts that we do for the gig that Brad is going to be doing to generate some kind of buzz and activity for him and the gig, we really ask you if you could do that. That would be cool, Simon.
Oh, would definitely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Shall I do a shout out to people in the chat? We've got a few people.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah. If we say good morning to Sunhouse, who was the first in, that's a new name. So welcome, Sunhouse. Phil Byers, Ellen, of course, Ellen. Good morning, Ellen. Hope you are. Holly, got my mug. Got it back from the hooligans. And I hope you had a lovely birthday yesterday. We've got John ZD351. Good to see you, John. Thank you very much for joining. We had some Dwight Bailey, the hitman, Dwight Bailey. Hope you follow Dwight. He's a real he's prolific, I think is the word, in putting out instrumental stuff. He's fantastic, Dwight. Well done. Good for you. Scrolling down, we had Stephen Fish. Good morning, Stephen.
Hi, Steve.
Christopher Lysova. Good morning, Christopher. Nice to see you too. Fantastic.
Hey, Chris.
KXM Rock. The boys from the Under the Bus Network must have just finished. They were on. Wayno as well. Wayno, good to see you. From sunny Boston, I do believe. And Paulie Walnut. Morning, Paulie.
Hey, Paulie.
How you doing? Good to see you too. Yeah, fantastic. Hopefully that's everybody. Did I miss anybody? I hope not.
Can I just ask Paulie a question?
Ask away.
Paulie, on your Facebook group, a guy posted a pic of him picking up what he thought was a DiMarzio pickup from Axis, and because there was no number on the back of it, is it right to think that it's not a DiMarzio Axis pickup? Did he get ripped off? I'm intrigued to find out your thoughts on that, because if he did, that's the perils of buying stuff, Brad, on the internet.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, not ask the experts. It's also the thing, isn't it? You know, we're in contact with lots of people on here, but lots of stuff. People who know a lot of stuff about things.
While
Definitely.
he's answering that, we might as well kick the show off, Brad.
Yeah, guys, let's do it. Well, we're
Side
26 minutes into the show, and we're finally getting onto the rankings. So it's pretty much on track, guys. We're doing the same show every week, 26 minutes.
We're doing well.
Yeah, we are doing well.
Very
So
well.
if for anyone who's just tuned in and they're not sure what we're doing, we are ranking Rubber Soul.
Join the club.
Yes, we don't know what we're doing, but we're having a crack at it. So we've been ranking Rubber Soul, and we've just finished side one last week. So we decided to split it into two parts. So today is side two, and the first track on side two is What Goes On, which obviously Ringo sings this one. It was a song that was written by Lennon back in '63. I believe they reworked it, and I think Ringo Starr got his first songwriting credit on this as well. I believe that McCartney and Ringo contributed to a few parts to the older song to make it what it is today. Has a, straight off the bat, it's got a very country feel. I love the stabbing guitar. The guitar line, the one that's sort of stabbing along there. Great guitar solo. I believe it's George that's playing the solo. Am I correct in saying he was using a Gretsch on this one, Tennessee?
Yeah,
Gotta be.
Tennessee, I think.
Gotta be.
Yeah,
100%.
It's got that vibe about it. The background vocals are absolutely fantastic in this. If you really pay attention to what's going on there, it's a very catchy song, catchy melody. Lyrically, it's got that whole thing about lovers, cheating or deceit. It's got a simple bass line from Paul, but it suits the simplicity of the song, and Ringo's drumming is so tactful the way he plays on this song. Very simple. I always think Ringo songs were great and purely imported onto the album as a way to connect with his massive fan base. We all know that. This song in particular is no exception. I think it's one of the great ones that Ringo actually did, and I think it's a fantastic song. I gave it 8.5 out of 10 and never a skip, gentlemen. Simon, I believe you're up next.
I'm up next. Yeah. Morning, Quentin. Fresh going live doing dodgy deals in car parks in Louisville, Kentucky. He came back with money, so can't have it. Oh dear. Yeah. So what goes on?
He's not selling his body again, is he?
Cool.
Nobody knows. He turned the camera off at the vital moment. Apparently, he sold his made in Mexico Strat. Yes, Quentin. Of course you did.
Well, he sold something.
His soul. He already did that. he got $2.49 for it.
It's a transaction.
Oh dear. Anyway, it's basically the Beatles go country, isn't it? As a thing. Do you know what? The one thing that struck me about it, is that's Lennon's Steve Cropper part. It's not a great part, is it? It's not. I thought to myself, it's not even that well played, but somehow it works, which is the thing. Clearly they didn't record it 500 times and go back and there's a bit of it sort of seemed a bit sort of a bit loose and a bit kind of amateur really, but it's a good part. But it did strike me, when I was listening to it, thinking, it's not a great part, that is. It's not fantastically played or anything. It just works in the context of the song as a. I agree with you about I think the harmony singing is really great on it as well. In Lennon, whoever's doing it, certainly McCartney doing it, but nice little rockabilly solo from George. The old Carl Perkins coming out, and so that's really cool. I gave it an 8 out of 10, but never a skip. It's a fun, light song, pretty jolly. Bounces along. Good opener to side 2.
Yeah, great.
Andrew.
Just reading the comments here in the chat. Holly's given it an 8. And our friend John Z D is ranking some tracks with us too. Always nice to see. Brad, you're right. It is a great
You ranking
guitar.
this album?
Yeah, well, we hope so.
Yeah, we hope so.
And it sounds like it could be a Vox top boost that they've got going on that Gretsch, I think. It sounds like it. Either that or that tone bender thing that they were using around that time in the studio. It would have given you a bit of an idea of how George sounded with those cranked up Fender amps and those Gibson amps that they were using back in the day in Germany when they were in the nightclubs, with playing those duo jets, Brad, So it would have given you a bit of an idea of I think, of how he sounded. And playing these licks would have been just a piece of cake to him. There would have been absolutely no effort whatsoever for him to go and play this stuff. Apparently, Ringo was a little bit nervous. I don't know. I'm asking you guys this because some books I read where they say that he relished singing. Certainly, he didn't mind singing live. But apparently, a couple of historians, Simon, are saying, that he was apparently a little bit nervous. Maybe not. I don't know. If he was nervous because he was part of a band that were contributing something, you could probably understand where the nerves came from. But one of the great things I think about the Beatles, and as opposed to, for example, the Rolling Stones, everybody sang. Everybody was going to be spotlighted in this band, Brad.
Yeah.
Everyone was going to have an opportunity to sing, and they do on this album. And actually, it goes back to the first album. Ringo was singing on the first album, so it wasn't as if it was something that he just fell into 3 or 4 times later because he was the shitty drummer, Simon. They made sure that he was going to be, part of this whole project. I think that's a point, worth noting.
Yeah, it's a good point, isn't it? The inclusion bit.
Yeah. And he gets better. He gets better in his capacity as a singer on other albums, but it's a fine version. Not much really going on here. I think it's a great country tune, Brad. That inspired a lot of people and was certainly a product of the time. But I've given this a 7 out of 10. Same score as John ZD351. But Simon, more importantly, it's never a skip.
No. I think that's entirely fair, and it's worth noting also that Ringo had, after the demise of the Beatles, he was the first. He had the biggest hits, didn't he? After the Beatles. Yeah, Photograph and stuff, and that album was big for him, really big in that sort of way.
Well, I think they were smart in the sense where they knew Ringo had a massive fan base, so they had to give the fans a Ringo song per album. It was, they knew that throughout the albums. They pretty much gave him one song or more. So, yeah. Right. So the next song we come to is a well, wow. It's a really, I'd call it a powerful song. It's called "Girl," and a wonderful, powerful Lennon song, written about a woman he obviously, was into, looked up to, or idolized, or whatever you want to call it, or wanted to have more than just a friendship with. Lennon's vocal on the song is incredible. I love the vocal tone that Lennon has. I love that sort of, he has that, I call it like an eerie sort of thing going on with his voice when he sings, like this softer voice. He's got like some eerie sort of thing going on. And there was a trick they did in the studio to highlight the inhaling sort of noise he makes when he goes. It's like
Yeah, I
a
know.
EQ thing they put on his voice, like a filter, to get more of that sort of staticky or hissy sort of sound. I'm not sure about the thing of the rumor was it was meant to be the sound of him inhaling wacky tobacco joint. I don't know whether that's the truth or not, but for me, I just think when I listen to it, I like to believe he's just like going, like taking a big deep breath in because it's all too much for him to handle. But yeah, it probably was some truth to that. Who knows? Background vocals on this are incredible. I know that through reading books and this one and a few other things that we mentioned last week, that they drew a lot of influence from the Beach Boys, and the Beach Boys drew a lot of influence from the Beatles, and we discussed all this last week. But I know that they put that section where where it goes, she's the kind of girl who puts you down with friends, and then she feels a fool, and there's the sort of vocal in the background of George and Paul. I know they did that because the Beach Boys were doing like the la-las and things like that, like la 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 la. So they thought we'll just change it up and put in there, that Beach Boys vibe, and I think it sounds wonderful. Perfect bass and drumming for this song by Ringo and Paul. I like to believe that Lennon at this point in his career was writing more about personal experience, wants and desires than previous. And this song is a perfect example of that. I don't know what else to say about this song. I think it's wonderful. I gave it a 10 out of 10 and never a skip, gentlemen.
Wow.
Simon.
No, I think, yeah, it's the singing, isn't it? It's the melody. It's a fantastic melody with elements of apparently of a, I don't know whether it's a Greek bouzouki, and it's got that sort of two-step bit in the middle as well that they play. But for me, it's really the harmony singing. It's that it's and his ability with the melody, really, unparalleled. Really, the Beatles are that being that thing about having a melody. It's got kind of quite gentle. It's quite a gentle song. Bass and drums. I mean, the drums are almost brushes. I don't know if it actually is brushes, but it's certainly very calm. And just a little picked guitar piece. It's got a really nice swing to it. But for me, it's the vocals that lift it, as ever with the Beatles. It's lifted out of the and they have a way with the melody, and it's not a 1-4-5 thing by a distance. It has a lot of other elements to it in terms of the melody. I too gave it a 10 out of 10 and never skipped it. It's just one of those things. You just whenever you go on, you just you can lie back and love the singing, and particularly and the song and the melody as well. Andrew.
Yeah, it's a fantastic song, isn't it? And it's the product of a little bit of pressure. Apparently Thursday, the 11th of November, was the deadline for completing Rubber Soul, and the Beatles were 3 tracks short, and this was one of them that they recorded and finished in 13 hours. So again, it's proof of how John Lennon, especially being the prime songwriter on a lot of these songs, can deliver Brad when he's under pressure, which is remarkable because, we've all read biographies and seen clips where, a lot of songwriters say they like to spend time crafting a song, but, Lennon can obviously dish them out left, right and centre. Depending on, again, who you read, and this was a remarkable thing for me because I too thought it was a song about a girl. But typically, being John Lennon and being very clever and astute in his observations, he revealed in '75 that it's a song a little bit about Christianity and Catholicism, and his criticism of it. which is remarkable. So if you go back and think of that in your mind when you go back and listen to the song again, folks, you'll pick it up, I'm sure, like I did, in a different light. And because of that, you know, I would have probably given this song years and years ago, Brad, maybe 5 or 6 out of 10 if we were doing something like this. But it's remarkable in the sense that, you know, this guy is, you know, a songwriter of an exceptional category. And for that, because he is writing about something in himself, about something about himself that isn't anything about the subject, is just, again, Simon, I think, mind-boggling. I love it. It's a 10 out of 10. It's never a skip. Go and listen to it with that in the back of your mind, folks, that it's a criticism about Christianity and Catholicism, and I'm sure you'll be surprised.
Yeah, well, it's it's that thing about moving away from just "I want to hold your hand," isn't it, to more other matters and other things. And I think this album is definitely the transition for that.
100%.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, wow. Definitely go back and listen
Brad.
to it differently. I'm Looking Through You is the next track. And wow, what a fantastic McCartney song. You know, when Paul writes a good song, this is what you get. I believe this was recorded during some last frantic attempts to finish this record before the deadlines. It's got that great acoustic guitar intro. And I want to say all the acoustic guitars on this record sound phenomenal, the way they've recorded them.
100%.
So that's a credit to George Martin to get that acoustic sounding like it's sitting in a room next to you is very hard to do on recordings, I've got to say. And that's what it sounds like when you're listening to it in a dark room. It sounds like someone's actually sitting next to you playing an acoustic guitar, which is wonderful. I love the electric guitar overdubs, the way the electric guitars come in. It's got that sort of grit to it as well. That little bit of edginess on the guitars sounds great. Great vocal from Paul McCartney. It sounds like he's doubled his voice, which is a real Lennon tricky. Lennon doubles his voice a lot on songs. He did. He used to double his voice a lot. The background vocals are great. I love when Paul McCartney pushes his voice, you know, with throughout his career, that whole thing of, you know, when he pushes those higher register notes and, you know, when he sings that line, "You're not the same," gives me goosebumps every time. I think it's phenomenal. I believe it was written around the time McCartney was, you know, in a relationship with Jane Asher, and it's rumored to be about, you know, some problems they were having within their relationship. Sorry. I love that contrast in the sound of the song. It's got like a acoustic thing. It's got the electric thing. It's a wonderful song. I gave it 9 out of 10 and never a skip, guys. Simon.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It just shows what pressure and kind of, you know, and focus can do, doesn't it, in producing songs and producing inspiration, really, and you know, not having unlimited time and not having unlimited resources actually can be perceived as a benefit, not as a barrier to you know, creating great things. And I think that's definitely part of you know, part of certainly the Beatles, you know, this early work that they did, you know, was get in the studio, you know, we've got another album to do before Christmas, let's get on with it, you know. And they produced some amazing stuff on this record, and it's it's quite I mean, I've listened to this record most of my life, and it's quite difficult to be objective about the songs, I have to say, but others will keep me in check, which is fine. But again, you know, it's quite a sharp, you know, acerbic song from McCartney. Definitely, you know, it's kind of like, you know, I've grown up and you haven't, and there's a bit sort of a bit of a slightly between you know, that and that reflecting that antagonism between two people. That again, it's a bit more grown up. It's a world away from I Want to Hold Your Hand for sure. And, again, the same things. As a great acoustic playing, they sound great, and I think that's Norman Smith was his love. This was his last album, so I think he deserves some credit for it as well for doing it. It's really the two-part lead vocals is fantastic. What makes it? Paul sings really passionately, pushing it along, and that's it's got that little sharp electric guitar interlude that I presume Harrison is playing. It's that little rundown.
Yeah.
Morning, Steve-O. Which is which I think is really good. It just gives it that kind of sharpness that it needs. A bit of that angularity that it needs at the end of each verse. Again, you've got the middle eight with the two-part harmony vocals, which is lovely. And I too would give it a 10 out of 10. Whenever it's my trouble is that I hear these songs. I don't need to play the record. What's terrible is that I've heard it. I don't need to play the record even to know what the song is and how it goes and all of that. And it's so I think my memory might be a bit clouded by this as a thing, but I am going to give it a 10 out of 10, and I clearly would never skip it. And I think it's I say on here a lot the Beatles are underrated, and I think these sorts of things, you just when you hear these things and how fresh they are and how beautifully sung they are and how beautifully arranged they are and how it all fits together and how they work as a unit, it's it's easy to sort of to be kind of blasé about it, but I resolutely not going to be blasé. So it's 10 out of 10 for me. You never skip. Andrew.
Yeah, we did KMX Rock, and that was nice to see on Michael's social media. So there's a couple of things, guys, I want to talk to you about this song. No one knows whether it's John or George playing lead guitar on this track, and I like that. No one can definitively, from my research, say who's doing it. So it's possibly George or it's possibly John.
Paul Lewisham will tell us. Mark Lewisham will tell us.
Yeah. Hopefully, Ringo's playing organ on this track too, folks. So go and check that out. But the real star, and I was going to grab one today, but I don't have one here. It's at work. Is the tambourine on this album? Just about every song has the tambourine, and it's a wonderful effect on a lot of these songs, and George is playing the tambourine. So George Harrison, besides being a great songwriter, a great guitar player, was a pretty bloody good tambourinist, bro. Probably going back to his no, I was going to say probably going back to his Hare Krishna days, but no, this is before his Hare Krishna days. So maybe that's why the Hare Krishnas recruited him, because he could hold a beat, bro.
I think.
Sorry about that. And I'm going to mention this, folks, too, because I get a little bit concerned when stars and legends have to kind of justify something that they wrote 50 years ago because of the thoughts and impressions of current journalists or writers or social media personalities. Paul McCartney apparently has defended himself. Well, not defended himself, but he was saying, look, this song is a product of me being a bachelor, where my life was centered around myself and my own wants and my own needs, as opposed to anybody else's. Well, you know,
25 or something.
Exactly. At 23, 24, 25 years old, what the hell, Brad, are you going to expect a guy to be thinking about when he's not married?
Whatever he wants to do. That's the question, indeed. Is it a rhetorical question?
Yeah. So kind of, it's a point that I'd like to make here. These guys and women don't have to make any apologies for anything that they wrote about back in the day. if you interpret it as you want, off you go, jog on, off you go with your interpretation, just like we're here jogging on with ours, aren't we? Guys, you guys have given this a high score. Look, I'd never skip this. I'm glad, Brad, you mentioned that when he's angry, that sudden burst of anger where he comes, you're not the same. You know, that's not acting, bro. That's not singing.
Point.
Yeah, you know that's he's, you know, maybe he's talking about himself, bro.
Maybe.
Ooh, internalizing. Very good.
Yeah. Look, guys, I've given this 8 out of 10. It's never a skip. Not a 10 for me. Not a 10, Brad.
It's all right. It's all right. Look, we don't have to get everything.
Hey, Johnny.
you think somebody's going to come in? My wife's going to come in with a knife. Ching, ching.
So the next track on the album, gentlemen, is "In My Life," written by John Lennon. Obviously, bit of a nostalgia piece for him, sort of looking into his past, and it's an amazing intro. Lovely, clean electric guitar sound. Again, that haunting vocal from Lennon, and I do believe that I call it that haunting sound that he's got because it's double tracked, and the dissonance between the double tracking gives it that little bit of haunt feel behind it. So yeah, you could almost listen to it and see someone come running in behind Simon through that door. I'm joking. I'm joking. But there's a haunting feel to it. Maybe haunting is not the correct word. I would say the only word I can think of to describe it at the moment. It's got eeriness about it, maybe. Yeah, that's probably a better word. An eerie sort of tonality going on. But I've always been a fan of Lennon's vocal tone. There's a lot of timbre in his voice, and I love that. Ringo plays very percussively in the verses. And then plays time wonderfully well in the pre-choruses, and that's the amazing thing about Ringo as a drummer. He will not just play time through a song; he hears the color in the song, and instead of playing through the verses like most basic drummers would sit there and play like time through it, he's playing very percussively. He's not actually playing like like a hi-hat sort of beat. High kick snare, like he's actually playing percussively through his drums, which is amazing. And those pre-choruses, then he comes in playing time. So he was a very colourful, creative drummer. He was phenomenal. It obviously still is, but through this time frame, we can't underrate his contribution to each song, because this song wouldn't have that feel without Ringo's playing. The melody and the chorus in this is very catchy, very catchy. The solo, the piano solo, I believe that was done by George Martin. It's an overdub, obviously done sort of probably later in the piece, maybe when they decided to mix it or something. He went in and did that. I'm not sure particular. I'd have to go through this again and read it, but I'm not going to do that right this moment. I call this song. I love the outro vocal, the way the song ends. I think it's recorded and written absolutely perfectly in every sense. It's a masterpiece. I give it 100 out of 10 and never a skip. Simon.
Yeah, I think it's yes. Martin did that Bach inspired piano solo. He did it later as an overdub, and when they weren't there, and they just left a section empty. But and I think it's a really good example of the way that George Martin starts to contribute a bit more. In terms of clearly done string arrangements and stuff before, but that was something quite different. I think the sound of the piano, the way that that's put together, very Bach influence thing, is very much his influence on the Beatles and bringing that in. And I think this is this is one of those tracks where you can see, you can see where the future things are going to come in, with strings and other stuff, clarinets, and all the stuff that they used on later albums. This is them starting to experiment with not only the way that because it's sort of like, apparently the piano was they recorded it at half speed and then played it back at normal speed, so it sounds like a harpsichord, not as as a piano. And again, that's that kind of quest for new sounds and new things. And I mean, you wouldn't expect this at this time. There was starting to experiment with new instruments and all that. The sitar is a good example of that. But I think that it's it's one of those songs which you can see that the way that creatively they're going, and the way that the creativity is opening up, and the way that George Martin is going to help them do that. And I think that's very strong on him. It's a beautiful song. It's fun. Again, the singing is fantastic. And that thing about having the piano, the piano that sounds like a hum, lifts it to a different level. I think, because again, it's pretty early for that sort of stuff. If you go on another 2 or 3 years, it's a bit more common. But right now, it's pretty. That Baroque section is amazing. And also, again, it's that kind of reflecting, his nostalgia for his, his youth in Liverpool and a time before he was famous and things. And a kind of, it was singing about internal issues, not about external issues as well. And I think that I've said it before, and I'll say, I think that's a Dylan influence, that kind of thing about to move away from, I want to hold your hand stuff, please me, into that more alternative, and that beautiful falsetto vocal at the end is fantastic. Just at the end, just to give it a little piquance at the end. Yeah, 100 out of 10 from me. It's a fantastic song. And, I wouldn't give it any less, but I would understand if anybody did. I think I'm a bit biased on this record. Is it? As I say, it's been in my life for so long that I can't really get past the fact that I know every song, and I love every song. 100 out of 10 for me, Mr. Walton.
Yeah, when I first heard this track when I was a young guy, there was something about the first opening lines that resonated with me. I thought it was just a fantastic lyric. Not just the music. The lyric itself, Brad, was just fantastic, and it's been a point of centrality for me when I consider some of the great John Lennon songs that he's written, and there's a couple of there's a quote that I'd like to read for you guys, and I don't want to paraphrase it, but I think it's important. It's just a short quote. He says, it was, I think, we're talking about in my life, my first real major piece of work. Up until then, I had been sort of glib and throwaway, and that was the first time I consciously put my literary part of myself into the lyric. And he certainly did that, didn't he? And there's a remarkable transition from John Lennon, especially from the previous album to this album, as far as a songwriter goes. And, the rock professor's already mentioned it, as much as we love I Want to Hold Your Hand, great songs, these are miles apart from those songs, and the bridge between these two albums clearly is the influence of Bob Dylan, not just on the Beatles, but on a generation, Brad, of songwriters. Think what you may about Bob Dylan as a guitar player or a singer, but you can't deny his greatness as a songwriter, and it's that part, I think, of Bob Dylan that needs to be sort of echoed, and I think we do a pretty good job of doing that on this channel when we talk about artists who are directly influenced by him. And again, it's got to be mentioned. I think the song is fantastic, Brad. It's been one of my favourite songs since I was a 13-year-old boy. You and I have included this song on our social media posts advertising this this show independently of each other. So there's a couple of comments here in the track, in the comments, sorry, about this track, about it being a masterpiece. I think it's one of Lennon's greatest songs, certainly up there in his top 5. This is a Brad score. It's never a skip. One of the best songs on this album.
Yeah. Wow, I agree, guys. Well, the next song on the album is Wait. And I believe, well, that great lead-in vocal to the song, it really highlights for me how well John and Paul worked together and sung together. I think John's voice is fantastic on this track. Paul's is equally as good, and on the part that he contributed to the song, the McCartney section, the middle 8 or whatever you want to call it, that little section that Paul sings on his own, that's his contribution to Lennon's song. And it works so well. And you can see this is a perfect example, in my opinion, of John had a song idea, Paul come up with a bit for it, and it just works. It's just thrown in there and just works. It's like a day in the life for that middle section. Paul come up with that for Lennon's song, and I couldn't imagine that song without that in it. It's phenomenal. So they worked so well together. They had a contrast in styles as well, but they came together so wonderfully well. Love the volume swells on the and on the electric guitar under the main melody. I think that's very cool. It's a very catchy song, has an amazing chorus. This is one, it features a tone pedal lead guitar, and there's percussion overdubs on it. This is one of the songs that they completed on the last day of recording, according to this wonderful book I keep referring to. And I think that's all I've got to say about this, guys, other than the fact that I gave it a 9 out of 10 and it's never a skip. I've got a massive list of things. I'm just culled it all down because we could be here all night talking about these songs. Simon.
Yeah, the minutiae of them is interesting because, as Holly said, props to the tambourine, which is clearly a sort of very Motown influence. I would say that it's all those Motown songs had tambourine on them, and I think that's an influence from Motown. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that stab guitar part goes very well with the vocals, doesn't it? That kind of thing. It kind of fits in with that really nicely.
Yeah.
Much more to say. It's I like it as a song. It's got a great melody again, and that beautiful 2-part a cappella bit at the end.
I've been alone. Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. That is just as a thing. I gave it 8 out of 10. Never a skip. It's I think it's a bit lighter than the previous song. So, but beautifully done as ever by the Beatles. Andrew.
Yeah, it's for me, Wait is something of a mirror of We Can Work It Out, and the relationship that the Beatles have. Thank you, bro. Yeah. You got it, eh? You got it, eh? Yeah. And the relationship that the Beatles have with a song on an album, and they can connect it to another song on an album after that is remarkable. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we do a few other, especially some of the other earlier Beatles albums, the first 3 or 4, where that definitely happens. You got Ringo, Brad on maracas, and Simon, you got John Lennon's playing the tambourine on this track. So, John Lennon's a pretty good tambourine player as well. So,
Tambo man.
Look, I really dug this song when I was a young fella. You know, it's an album song. I love the tambourine and the maracas, the way that they give that the song a little bit of that energy, which is great. And you can see how when Brad mentioned in his intro way back way back on part
Way
one,
back,
way back on part one, folks,
way back last week.
that you know this defined and was considered a folk influencer, and you can understand why when you consider the acoustic instruments, not the acoustic guitars, but you know the acoustic rhythm instruments. So you can see where that kind of came into a connection of sorts. I like that. I've given this a 9 out of 10, Brad. It's not a bad song at all.
No, it's a great song.
Oh no,
It's definitely an album song, and we'll talk about it when we wrap up. Actually, I've got a point that you may have even highlighted, Andrew. So we're on the same path, I think. Yeah.
Cool.
So we are on to the next Harrison song on the record.
yeah.
If I Need Someone. I love this song. I love the jangly guitar. I know they were very heavily influenced at the time, or you know, when they went to the Birds and saw them recording, and they got a big influence from that. So I believe this song was written, and that guitar influence was dragged into this song. I believe, I could be incorrect here, I believe it's a love song for Patty Boyd, the woman that's probably got the most songs ever written about her. I mean, well, a woman that's got probably some of the most popular and biggest hits in the world ever written. They're written about her. Like I said, a lovely guitar tone, amazing melody, catchy chorus. George's voice sounds really developed here. As a lead vocalist, he seems very comfortable singing this song. I know, you know, he was a couple of years younger than them, and he sort of developed as the band progressed, where
Yep.
Paul and John sort of led the way. He was sort of coming the dark horse. He was the dark horse of the band, I think, and he came up from behind, and you know, he met them at the end on par with them by far, you know. And his voice at this point is very comfortable. He seems like he's you know, he's very comfortable singing up front and leading the band. The background vocals are amazing. Great drumming and bass playing. Paul's bass playing is phenomenal on all the tracks, as Ringo's drumming, but I love it. They just play perfectly for the song. I know George's influence in music at the time coming into it. There was like you know, he was still sort of getting into Indian music and that sort of, that classic Indian sort of influence. And I know he was using droney stuff, and I believe he wanted to get the jangly thing going with the guitars like the Birds, but also to give a real Indian flavor to the song, including the melody, which is in a Mixolydian sort of melody, which a scale, sorry, which is a predominantly used sort of scale when you're using Indian melodies. So I love this song, and you know, Harrison being one of my favorite sort of Beatles. I don't know if it's a favorite or not, guys. I'd love to hear what you guys have got to say about this song, but I gave it 100 out of 10. It's one of my favorite tracks on the record, guys. Simon.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely that amalgamation for me, part Birds, part Indian sitar style for sure. Yeah. That you know, apparently it's a 12-string with a capo at the 7th fret. I read somewhere, hopefully. But that's right. It's again, it's just got that beautiful melody, and you know, and the instrumentation is just perfect for it. as I say, it's got that leaning into Indian classical music that gives it, a real kind of fresh and different feeling and sound to it. And I agree with you. It's a love song written to Patty Boys. As you said, lots of songs written about Patty Boys. It's been quite weird to have loads of songs written about you by different people, mustn't it? It must be quite an odd feeling.
I say to my girlfriend, I think she must have had some golden body parts, I think.
I think you need to be careful. We're live.
Yes. I think rays of sunshine came from her. Let's just say that.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Is that why George wrote "Here Comes the Sun"? I'm not sure.
Yes.
I'm joking.
Yeah.
No, he didn't actually. I'm joking. Continue, Simon. Please put the show back. Take the show and put it back on the tracks, please. Simon, go.
Tell him, sir. Tell him to stop messing about.
Hey, I'm timed out.
Lovely, beautiful. It's yeah, beautifully sung, and that 2-part lead vocals as well is fantastic. I too would give it 10 out of 10 and never a skip. It's fantastic, and shows that Harrison can keep up with Lennon and McCartney, and he can write fantastic songs as well, songs that are more than worthy of inclusion in the rarefied atmosphere of Lennon McCartney. And I think there's some stuff in there that Dylan influence. I'm sorry to keep on about the Dylan influence, but coming through in this as well. That Harrison, they were close to Harrison and Dylan, certainly later, clearly. Andrew.
Yeah, I'm glad Brad mentioned Roger from the Byrds, because something's come full circle on this song. So Roger goes and buys Rickenbacker 12-string because he sees George playing one on A Hard Day's Night, and he talks about that. He talks about how he saw this guy playing this guitar, goes and gets one. 2 weeks before he records this song, the Byrds come out with Mr. Tambourine Man, which has a huge influence, obviously, on George Harrison. So George Harrison talks about this a little bit on his video, Material World, where he talks about, the D chord, just doing the D chord and just moving those fingers around Brad and just getting those tonal variations. So he did that, and as the rock professor said, capo's at the 7th fret, and so he's playing that D chord, which makes the song an A. So these guys are very clever. They know what they're doing long before YouTube. They're working out these tonal variations. And, again, we've got to say this, they're young. How old is George? 22? 23?
Yeah.
When he's doing this. So I don't want to repeat the point that Brad made about him growing in as a songwriter, but, his contributions certainly on this album paved the way for him to be up there as one of the greatest songwriters in his own right. And Brad, you mentioned that he was a dark horse. We got to do a shout out to George, because today Dark Horse was released, his 5th studio album in 1974. So thank you for picking that descriptive for the Dark Horse himself, because
it's like George was telling me to mention it.
Yeah, you see, bro. So we've got connections to the stars here on this show, folks.
Oh goodness.
Yeah.
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 All right.
Yeah.
YouTube. All right, YouTube.
Yeah. Pay attention, YouTube. Are you listening, YouTube?
I'm going to just mention one other thing too before I hand it back to Brad. One of the reasons why I love this song, bro, is because this becomes a major song when they tour in '67. There's lots of footage of George playing this. He plays it especially at the Budokan. There's a wonderful version of him playing this song, and I can't wait for the three of us to do a review of that gig, because that's just phenomenal, that gig, as far as Beatles nuts go, for a lot of reasons. but I just love the way that he plays that effortlessly. And if you go and listen to those live recordings of him playing it live, mate, he doesn't miss a beat.
No. He's, all that practice paid off, didn't it?
Yes, Simon, he just, you know, there's no bum notes going on, you know, at all. So, Brad, this is a Brad score. It's, John ZD351 gave it, what, 8 or 9 out of 10 or something like that. What did he give it? 8 out of 10.
Honestly.
Yeah.
8 out of 10.
You know what? When he comes on the Christmas show, we're just going to time him out immediately for
it.
Brad score, bro.
I did want to say one thing about this song that I forgot to mention, that I do hear glimpses and glimmers of what he started to do in his solo career musically. So you can hear little. When I'm listening to that song in particular, I'm hearing, oh, that sounds like something off All Things Must Pass. I can't put my finger on it, but I'm hearing little glimmers of there. Obviously developed from that, but that still might have been the capo on the fret, like you said, and that resonates with another song that he did the same thing on. I don't know, but anyway, I think that was something that I picked up.
It's amazing, isn't it, that you know, if you compare this to Mr. Tambourine Man, I mean, Mr. Tambourine is one of my favourite Bob Dylan songs ever. It's just, I think it's an extraordinary piece of work. But you know, to see where Dylan was at the same period of this, you know, you can see that they're being dragged in his wake to other things. But you know, in my world, clearly way behind. But yeah.
Well,
anyway,
gentlemen,
sorry, Brad,
we have got back to the last track on the album, and it's a absolute cracker. It's called "Run for Your Life." It's a lovely acoustic intro. There's some country stylings on guitar, playing in that main riff, that descending guitar line. Lovely bass playing from McCartney in this song, and drumming from Ringo. If you have a listen to what Ringo's doing on the hi-hats, especially, there's some really, really nice stuff going on there. I know that it's not, well, everyone sort of knows, if you've read the books and everything like that, Lennon stole the first line of, from Elvis's "Baby, Let's Play House." I'd rather see you dead, little girl, than to be with another man. Obviously, he borrowed it. Let's just say borrowed the lyric. And I know that this apparently, I think it was in this one I put here, in this book here. I know I keep mentioning this one. A lot of the stuff I got from here in my notes and everything is from this book. And I know that they were frantic trying to get this album done, and I know that this is one of the first tracks that they got into, and I believe later Lennon disliked this song a lot. But despite that, I think it's a wonderful song. There's a very jealous guy theme there, which his jealous guy comes in Double Fantasy later on. So that theme of being a jealous guy could draw. I think this song draws, honestly, into his own insecurities. And we know that around this particular time and help and all that, he was crying out for help there a little bit. He was sort of, looking inward a little bit on this song. I don't believe he wanted to see someone dead than to be with another man. But it was just the song was to get the song done and get on with things. And look, I think it's a wonderful song. I love that descending guitar line. I really love that descending guitar line. I think that's the star of the song for me. I don't know who's playing it. I'm assuming it's George. But I gave this song a 9.5 and never a skip, guys. Simon.
It's very interesting. John has brought up a very interesting issue about it. It's he can't get past the slightly dodgy lyrics, and with this, and you mentioned a couple of other songs as well. Hey Joe and Guns N' Roses, I Used to Love Her. It's just really interesting that it can colour your opinion of it so strongly, John. Thanks for sharing that. It's really interesting. It's again, yeah. This to me is more a kind of where the Beatles are coming from type of song. It's fairly straightforward in terms of, you can almost hear it coming from, say, Help or Hard Day's Night or something like that. There's a much more simple, straightforward thing. I like the fact that the first two lines are sung by Lennon, then McCartney joins in for the latter half of the verses. That's really cool. I like that kind of slide chord part, and then the single high note part that they put together as well. Just really nice, kind of just intertwining quite simple elements to make something memorable, and that bass that makes it swing. And we've not really talked too much about Paul McCartney's fantastic bass playing, but always a fantastic bass player. Always knows when to keep it simple, knows when to make it swing, knows when to crank it up. Just an amazing underrated bass player, probably still. Yeah, I know, I completely understand. And again, it's got tambourine on it as well, so it's I give this an 8.5 out of 10, but I wouldn't skip it, John. I can get past the lyrics, to be honest. I think it's a bit of Lennon bluff and bluster, basically. Andrew.
Yeah, look, I understand what John is saying in the comments, folks. I understand that. I dig it. I get it. And John Lennon himself has come out and said that the song's phony. But we got to remember, though, that at the same time when John's calling this song phony, he's calling a lot of other songs, Simon, that they wrote phony, fake, and throwaways as well. So. So I mentioned earlier that I'm a little bit not influenced by what other people on social media say about songs, or if they want to criticize an artist or a band for misogyny or racism or whatever. Fine, we're entitled to your opinion and you can give it, but to ask for people to apologize for something that they wrote 50 years ago, jog on. But when the artist comes out, well, when the artist comes out themselves and they want to be critical about something they wrote, well, that's a little bit different, Brad. That's because they wrote the song. So they have more right than anybody else to voice any kind of criticism of something that they wrote. And like I said, Lennon was doing everything that he could, Simon, for right through the 70s, certainly the first part of the 70s, to tear down any myth, any kind of, aura relationship that he had with the Beatles. He said some nasty things about some of the great songs that he wrote. And then sort of after a little bit in the late 70s kind of said, yeah, I did say some things that, I didn't quite necessarily mean. But I think the lyrics on this song, you could probably take him at his word, Simon, because, they are pretty grim. But I agree with you, though, Simon. I think they're just throwing words around. I think this is part of their Bob Dylan kind of phase that they're going through, Brad, and trying to push the envelope as well. You mentioned that this was the last song on the album, but it was the first song that they recorded. So that they were kind of trying to be a little bit edgy, Brad. I think, and they did it. You know, they were smoking pot and they were talking about, you know, deceit, lying, and cheating, and I'm going to put you in your grave. You know, it's like, wow, would have freaked a few people out. I would have skipped the song off the album and put 12 bar original on.
Yeah.
I could easily listen to this album without the song on it. With that, if you remember, that was one of the things that I thought maybe that you guys might want to do as a little activity. I'm still going to rank it though, Brad. I'm going to give it 7 out of 10, but it's never a skip, bro. It's never a skip.
Yeah. Well, guys, you mentioned, Andrew, about putting 12 bar on there, and that brings me to a point that I mentioned in the first episode we did on this album, that I wanted to get your guys' opinions on the singles they released, and whether they should have gone on this album. I know it was a different era back in the mid-60s where bands would release singles that would lure people to the album, but they weren't necessarily always on the album. And I know the Beatles did it a little bit. And on this particular album, well, the singles that came out were Day Tripper and We Can Work It Out around the same time.
100%. And I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm just going to say one thing, and I'm going to let you finish it off, and I'm going to let the Rock Professor add his little piece. So John Lennon fought. He was the leader of the band, and he made sure that this was going to be the single. This was the single, you know. And that riff, that opening riff on Day Tripper, you know, that he discovered, he was playing that riff on every single song when they were recording this album. You know, he just couldn't get that riff out of his head. So if you're a Beatles nut and you want to learn a riff, go and learn that riff. That's the riff that's going to see you connect to the stars like Brad does. You see, you know, that connection that Brad has, because Brad can play that riff. It's metaphysical.
I was going to play it, but then I thought we'll get flagged. So
yeah. But yeah, we all can play it. Yeah, but Brad's right. You know, it's an important riff. Day Tripper is just one of the best songs ever, bro.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So which brings me to my point that I think maybe Run for Your Life could have been a B-side as opposed to being on the album.
Oh,
Day Tripper could have been on the album. I think We Can Work It Out is a very catchy song as well, and I think it should have been on the album as well. But I know they had time restraints for LPs and for vinyl, and that was but what I'm trying to get to is, if they were under so much pressure to get the album done, why didn't they put these songs on there? And maybe not. I don't know. I think
good point.
Pressure from the record company's management. You know, I'm not sure how that works. So maybe someone in the chat might be able to clear that up. Someone watching it later might be able to put some comments there for us to get a better understanding of that. But I think both those songs should have been on the album.
I would have got rid of What Goes On as well and put Day Tripper on there, or We Can Work It Out. What Goes On could easily be knocked off this album too.
So, but we know that the Beatles made a conscious effort of always putting a Ringo song on. They always did. It was like to appease the Ringo fans. So what are your thoughts on it, Simon?
Well, I think that they have a bit of history, don't they, of not putting songs on albums and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, Penny Lane and things. You know, later on, Strawberry Fields weren't on Sgt. Pepper's. You know, they're kind of standalone things. And you know, you could make a really strong argument for putting, you know, Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane on the Sgt. Pepper's kind of thing. So I think it's, you know, it's part of that, to be honest. It's part of, you know, you release a single and that's a single. And of course, you've got to remember, you know, we look on Day Trip, we look back on it where it is, and and we say, oh, that's one of their best songs or whatever, But I think at the time, you're just recording the next thing and then putting it out, and then you're on to the next thing, and it's kind of roller coaster, and you don't think about it so much, yeah. So I think that there's quite a lot of that involved in it, in that we're applying a sort of historical view to it that they're not applying. They're just going to the next thing.
Well, maybe Paul McCartney should have argued a little bit harder for Michelle to be the single. Then Day Tripper would have been on the album.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, but who knows? I think why they left those two songs off, and those two songs are clearly stronger than some of the songs on the album for sure. And I think that that in those days, of course, 65, 66 is probably the apex of the single, and then it starts going into the album market, and this is prescient of that moving more towards albums and stuff, and away from singles. But I think it's entirely within their the way that they worked, is that they put out songs that weren't on albums and things, and between them, because it keeps the market moving, doesn't it? They're on, this is their
100%.
second album in 65, and they've released the singles as well. It just keeps the market rolling, and in those days that's what you had to do, wasn't it? You had to keep the market rolling by you release another single, and you release another album and another single, and it's only later they started to get off that as a the roller coaster bit, but
singles were important back then. They were extremely important, and I just want to mention that point that John makes. But back then, you wouldn't put a single on an album, Brad. You wouldn't do that. It was a couple of years later, about 68, 69, you could get away with doing that, Simon. But back then, it was a little bit.
Well, I think as the album gets more popular, then you put the singles on the album, because then it sells the album, doesn't it? As a thing. But I think this is not quite the case now, and I think, as I say, the Beatles have a history of not doing it, and whether you go back and do it now, I think is a good argument, and you probably would do that and shuffle it around a bit and make it a different album completely. But then it wouldn't be Rubber Soul, would it? It would be something else.
No. Good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
Well, they're just thoughts, guys, and I'm glad we can talk about it. And I would have loved to have, I got a Beatles box set, on CD, like a bread box one that my father bought me for Christmas, with opening a bread box, and it had Past Masters volumes 1 and 2 in it. So I had the songs, and it wasn't like a big deal. But the point is, I would love to have heard them on that album, because Rubber Soul, is a fairly favorite of mine. I used to love listening to Rubber Soul more than some of the earlier ones or the later ones when I first got into the Beatles. I loved it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Beatles for Sale, and then obviously this album and Revolver were the ones for a couple of years for me, as well as we're familiar with the first two albums, but yeah. I think you've hit the nail on the head, Brad. These other albums there was something going on extra.
Yeah.
Well, this is definitely what I would call a transition album, isn't it? You can see some parts of it are harking back to what they see. They're very simple kind of pop songs. And some parts of it have much more kind of experimentation in them. The beginnings of that, with the sitar, with the Birdsy influence, with the Indian music, and clearly there's there's the drugs bit as well, marijuana and LSD. Starting to do more overdubs. George Martin starting to be more involved and stuff, and I think that this makes this a transition album for me. And you can see where they're going to go with Revolver next, and then into Sergeant Pepper's after that. So I think it's a really important album from that. In that, it kind of strides across those two different worlds, really, and you can see where they're going, and you can see where they've been, where they've come from.
Can I call it maybe?
You could call it Rubber Soul.
It's a very important album for them, like a turning point in their careers. This album, so
yeah, absolutely.
Part one of part two being Revolver and Rubber Soul. I always saw them as like part one, part two.
Yes, I think that's right. I think
the first series album they really got to right was this one, and then the next one leaned even heavier on those influences that you just mentioned, Simon. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So,
well, gentlemen, thank you for
to go back and visit it again.
Thank you for letting me suggest this record and hogging your episode of doing the Doors, Simon.
Thank you for ruining my whole lineup. It's fine.
Last album of the year, bro.
Yeah. But you know what? It just worked out really well because the timing of it when we did it was the release date of Rubber Soul. And then the next week we did it this week, and it's the week of Lennon's passing. So it's nice to do something in relation to Lennon at that particular time of the year, I think, as well. So
and Dark Horse being released as well. And George.
Yes. So it's worked out really well, gentlemen.
See, we've got connections to the stars, folks.
And it's not even intentional; it just sort of worked out that way. So it was meant to be.
Thank you, bro. Thank you, guys. Thank you fantastically for everyone's comments in the chat. Good to see you, Ryan. All our friends. The Rock Professor's going to do a shout out to you guys soon. It's the last shout out for the ranking of the tracks. We'll be back here next week. I'm streaming 2:00 New Zealand time for a few hours. Brad's going to pop on at some stage, the Rock Professor, when he wakes up. We're going to have John ZD351 hanging out with us, Hoss. We're going to have Jimmy and John Conklin's joining us. Lots of people, lots of fans, family hanging out with us, family and friends. So please, if you want to jump on, we'll give you a link.
Yeah, fantastic. Great to see you all. If you fancy jumping on, it'd be brilliant. Yeah, I've got a gig next Saturday as well, so it's going to be a busy day for the Rock Professor.
No videos.
Out. No videos. No videos. No, quite right.
No videos. no videos because we lost 1,000 views. Remember, we lost it when we had to edit that bloody show.
No videos.
That's nice. So yeah, I'll say goodnight. Thanks to Holly, Ellen, Stephen, Greg Roberts, Tune, Johnny Heartbreaker. Fantastic to see you all. John ZD351. Thanks, John. Great thoughts and an interesting, provoking, proper discussion, which is really cool. Ryan Hall. Thanks, Brian. Stephen Fish. What else have we had? Going back up the chat. It's our last show of this year. Ellen, John, KXM Rock as well. Thanks, KXM. Good to see you. Thanks for dropping by. John. About the top. Tricky. Christopher, Live Sober. Nice to see you, Christopher. Thanks for your comments as well. Fantastic. Johnny Heartbreaker. Nice to see you, Johnny. Thanks, mate. Thanks for everyone's support this year. We've had a good year. We've done some great albums, and thanks to everyone who comes and watches and comments and things. That's Derek Clacton in his absence as well as a fantastic contributor via the comments. Phil S, Norwich Guitar, Steve-O, 12 Snyder, nice to see you. Thanks, guys, for dropping by.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Yeah. So Phil Byers as well. Thanks, Phil. Good to see you as well. All these are fantastic. Quentin, of course. Nice to see you, Quentin. And that's as far up as it goes. But so I hope I got everyone. Yeah, but thanks for all your support this year. Another great year for us, and we storm into the new year with a whole lot of new albums to do. In case we're thinking of running out, which we aren't.
No. If we ever do, we'll start again.
Yeah, go round again. Take care. All see you next week, and hope you can join us if you want to. Got the link? Ask us. Take it
Yeah,
away,
there's some
Aaron.
people in this
Really there?
there's some people in this chat we want to see on the show. You know who you are. You know who you are.
Yeah.
You people on this chat. We want to see you.
Yay.